The most dangerous kings in history were the ones you never heard coming, the ones who said the least, moved the least, and controlled everything. There are 7 lessons, 7 dangerous, ancient, ruthlessly effective lessons that will transform you from someone who reacts to the world into someone the world cannot read. And what it cannot read, it cannot stop. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince as a warning. He wrote it as a manual for the kind of person most people are too comfortable to become. The people destroying you in silence are using principles you haven't learned yet. The rooms you keep losing ground in have rules no one told you about, and the version of yourself that never breaks, the one that moves through chaos like water through stone, already exists inside you. You just haven't been shown how to unlock it until now. There is an archetype so rare that most people will spend their entire lives in the presence of one and never recognize what they are standing next to. We call it the silent king. Not a king by title, not a king by inheritance or announcement, a king by architecture, by the way they are built inside. The silent king does not demand respect, they generate it, automatically, unavoidably, without a single word of self-promotion. People feel them before they understand them. They sense the gravity, the stillness, the quiet certainty of someone who has already decided who they are and does not need the room to confirm it. Most people will never become this, not because the lessons are secret, but because most people are addicted to being understood, and the silent king has long since stopped needing that. Pay attention to this. Everything the world trained you to do is the opposite of what makes you unbreakable. From childhood you were taught to explain yourself, justify your choices, defend your position, make people comfortable with who you are. You were taught that silence is awkward, that stillness is weakness, that a man who doesn't react must not care. Here's where most people get it wrong. They believe visibility equals power, that the more people see you, the more you matter. But visibility without mystery is just exposure, and exposure is vulnerability. Machiavelli understood this at the cellular level. The prince who shows everything he is gives his enemies a complete map. The prince who reveals only what he chooses becomes a territory no one can navigate without his permission. The world didn't teach you this, because a person who cannot be read, cannot be sold to, cannot be manipulated, cannot be controlled, and the systems built around you depend on your transparency. So they rewarded your openness. They punished your silence. They called your stillness coldness. They called your restraint indifference. They were afraid of what you were becoming. Think about that. You're in a room where someone is performing, loudly, confidently, aggressively taking up space. They are making sure everyone knows what they've achieved, what they're worth, what position they occupy, and the room responds, laughs at the right moments, nods at the right moments, performs back, and in the corner, quiet, unhurried, watching, is someone who hasn't said a word in 20 minutes. They don't laugh at the right moments. They observe them. They don't nod. They file. And when they finally speak, one sentence, the entire energy of the room shifts, not because of what they said, because of the weight behind it. That is the silent king, not performing power, possessing it. But this is where it gets dangerous, because these 7 lessons don't just make you harder to read, they make you harder to manipulate, harder to provoke, harder to contain. And in a world that profits from your reaction, that makes you dangerous. Let's go through them. Lesson number 1. Master the architecture of silence. Silence is not the absence of something. Silence is a structure, a deliberate, engineered, psychologically precise structure. The silent king understands what most people never will. Every word you withhold is information your enemy cannot use. Every reaction you suppress is a weapon they cannot take from you. Every silence you hold is territory you keep. Most people fill silence because it makes them uncomfortable. But here is the truth. Silence doesn't make you uncomfortable. It makes them uncomfortable, and discomfort in others is data. Watch what people do in your silence. They talk, they over-explain, they reveal, they fill the space with everything they're trying to hide. All you had to do was stay quiet. Machiavelli called it economy of expression. The prince who speaks less is attributed more. The prince who reveals less is feared more. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is the loudest statement a powerful person can make. The king who needs to prove his power has already lost it. Write that down, because it will change how you enter every room for the rest of your life. You're in a negotiation. The other person has laid out their position. They've explained it twice, added justifications you didn't ask for, filled every silence with more words. And now they've stopped, and they're waiting. The reactive person responds immediately, fills the gap, matches their energy, reveals their hand. The silent king waits 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 7, says nothing, just holds the space and watches the other person start talking again, adding concessions they never intended to make, softening positions that were presented as firm, revealing the number they were actually willing to accept. You never asked for any of it, you just didn't speak. Silence isn't passive. In the hands of the silent king, silence is the sharpest negotiation tool in existence. Lesson number 2. Never react. Always respond. Here is one of the most important distinctions you will ever learn. Reaction is automatic. Response is chosen. Reaction belongs to whoever provoked you. Response belongs to you. Most people live their entire lives in reaction. Someone disrespects them, they react. Someone challenges them, they react. Someone ignores them, they react. And in reacting, they hand over the one thing no one should ever be able to take from them: their composure. Machiavelli watched entire kingdoms fall because rulers reacted, because a king who loses his composure in public has just shown every person in that room where he can be broken, and they will remember, and they will use it. The silent king doesn't react, not because they don't feel, but because they have built enough internal architecture to hold the feeling without letting it speak before they're ready. Feel everything. Show nothing you haven't chosen to show. Someone undermines you in a meeting, publicly, subtly enough to be deniable, sharply enough to land. The room watches. The reactive person defends, gets louder, proves the attack landed by the speed of the counterattack. The silent king does not change expression, does not increase volume, does not speed up. They pause. They look at the person with the calm, unhurried attention of someone who has just filed important information, and then they continue, as if nothing happened, as if the attack didn't have enough mass to alter their trajectory. And later, privately, strategically, precisely, they address it on their timeline, in the space they control. That is the difference between reaction and response. One surrenders the frame, the other owns it. Lesson number 3. Control your information like a king controls his borders. Information is territory, and the silent king governs his territory with precision. Most people are leaking constantly. They share too much. They explain too much. They volunteer too much. They tell people what they're working on before it's done. They announce intentions before they're executed. They share vulnerabilities disguised as authenticity, and every piece of information they release is a piece of leverage they have handed to someone else. Here's the truth. You do not owe anyone a complete picture of yourself. Not your plans, not your struggles, not your doubts, not your next move. The silent king shares strategically. He gives enough to build trust, enough to be readable on the surface, but the interior, the real architecture, remains sovereign. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both, but there is a layer beneath that. It is better to be mysterious than fully known." Because the fully known person can be predicted, and the predictable person can always be outmaneuvered. You've been working on something for months, something significant, and someone asks you about it, casually, warmly, with what looks like genuine interest. The reactive person tells them everything: the vision, the timeline, the challenges, the excitement. The silent king says something true, something warm, something completely non-specific, something that communicates engagement without revealing architecture. They leave the conversation knowing you're working on something. They do not know what, they do not know when, they do not know how. And in that gap, that deliberate, maintained gap, you hold every advantage. Not because you distrust them, but because you have learned that unfinished work announced too early dies in the telling. And this is why most people never see it coming. Because the silent king doesn't look like he's playing. He looks like he's just present, just listening, just existing in the room without agenda. But every silence is architecture. Every word withheld is strategy. Every response chosen with surgical precision. Most people walk away from a conversation with the silent king feeling strangely known, strangely seen, strangely trusting, and they don't know why. Because the silent king gave them almost nothing, but received everything. Lesson number 4. Become unreadable. Make unpredictability your armor. Predictability is a cage. The moment someone can predict how you'll react, they own the next move. They can provoke you on schedule, dismiss you with precision, manipulate you with efficiency, because they already know the outcome before the interaction begins. The silent king breaks this. Not through chaos, not through volatility, through deliberate, disciplined unpredictability. He agrees when you expect resistance. He stays quiet when you expect defense. He moves when you expect stillness. He is still when you expect movement. And in that permanent uncertainty, he holds an advantage no one can close. Because you cannot outmaneuver someone whose next move you cannot predict. Someone has been testing you. Small provocations, nothing dramatic, just measuring, trying to map your edges. Find the trigger, locate the boundary where you become reactive. The first time, you notice, you say nothing. The second time, you file it, you say nothing. The third time, you do something completely unexpected. You smile. You agree with something in what they said. You extend a small, genuine acknowledgement and watch them recalibrate from scratch. Because the map they were building just became useless. That is unpredictability as armor. Not aggression, not defense. Just the quiet refusal to be where they expected you to be. Lesson number 5. Let them underestimate you. It is your greatest weapon. Here is something most powerful people understand that no one talks about. Being underestimated is a gift, not an insult. A gift, because the person who underestimates you has lowered their guard, has reduced their preparation, has walked into the room assuming an outcome that serves you. The silent king never corrects the underestimation. He lets it breathe. He lets it grow. He lets the other person settle into their assumption of superiority. And then, when the moment is right, when the position is set, he moves, quietly, decisively, and by the time they understand what just happened, it is already done. Machiavelli called this the virtue of the fox. The ability to appear weaker than you are, smaller than you are, less dangerous than you are, until the moment you choose to stop appearing. You walk into a room where someone has already decided you're not a threat. They've heard of you. They've formed their assessment. They're relaxed. They're performing for the room, but not particularly for you. You observe. You ask questions that sound simple. You make them feel like the most capable person in the room. You give them the frame they wanted. And while they're performing, you're learning everything. Their strategy, their insecurities, their blind spots, their assumptions. And weeks later, when you move, they will try to understand when it changed. They will not be able to find the moment, because there was never a moment. There was just a king who let them underestimate him until he was ready. Lesson number 6. Build your interior like a fortress. The unbreakable exterior begins inside, not in tactics, not in strategy, not in how you present yourself to the world. It begins in the interior architecture of who you are when no one is watching, when the room is empty, when the pressure is at its maximum, when everything is telling you to react, to break, to collapse into the emotion. The silent king has built something inside that most people have never constructed. A fortress, not of stone, of identity, of clarity about who they are, what they stand for, what they will not be moved from. Most people are porous. They absorb the energy of every room, the opinions of every person, the pressure of every expectation, and they reshape themselves accordingly. The silent king doesn't reshape. He enters every room the same, leaves every room the same. What happened in between did not alter the foundation. Machiavelli called this virtue, not virtue in the moral sense, but inner force, the quality of a man who cannot be redirected by circumstance, who bends without breaking, who absorbs without being altered, who stands at the center of chaos and remains the only still point in the storm. Everything goes wrong at once. The plan unravels. The room turns. The person you trusted reveals they were not trustworthy. The reactive person collapses into the event, becomes it, is defined by it. The silent king observes it, names it privately, feels what needs to be felt, and then sets it aside, not in denial, not in suppression, with the calm authority of someone who knows that their identity is not located in outcomes. It is located in something the outcome cannot touch. That is the fortress interior. That is the thing that makes a person genuinely unbreakable, not the absence of difficulty. The presence of something inside that difficulty cannot destroy. Let's zoom out, because there is a frame beneath all 7 of these lessons, and it is the frame that changes everything. Most people are playing a reactive game. Something happens, they respond. Something happens, they respond. They are always behind, always catching up, always operating inside someone else's frame. The silent king plays a different game entirely. He does not play reactive chess. He sets the board. He chooses which pieces exist. He decides what the game is before it begins. And by the time other people realize a game is being played, the silent king has already positioned himself 3 moves ahead of the outcome. This is not manipulation. This is not ruthlessness for its own sake. This is the mastery of a man who has decided that his life will be lived by design, not by accident, not by the defaults others set for him, by deliberate architectural intention. The rules are simple. Either you set the frame or someone else sets it for you. Either you choose the game or you play the one you were handed. There is no neutral ground. There is no opting out. The only question is whether you play consciously or unconsciously. The silent king plays consciously, always. Lesson number 7. Move in silence. Let your results announce you. This is the final lesson, and the one that ties everything together. Most people announce before they execute. They talk about what they're going to do. They perform the intention before the outcome exists. They need the world to witness their ambition before they've earned the right to claim it. And in that announcement, they invite resistance. They invite doubt. They invite the opinions of people who have no stake in their success. The silent king does the opposite. He moves without announcement. He builds without broadcast. He executes without performance. And when the result arrives, it speaks in a language that needs no translation, not because he is secretive for its own sake, but because he understands that energy spent explaining is energy not spent building. That attention given to performance is attention taken from execution. That the most powerful statement a person can make is not what they say they'll do. It is what they have already done, while everyone else was still talking. Let's be honest about the cost of this. The silent king is not universally loved. He is not the most popular person in the room. He will be called cold, distant, arrogant, hard to know, and he will let them say it, because the silent king has long since stopped optimizing for being liked. He optimizes for being effective, for being trusted by the people who matter, for being respected in the rooms where it counts. And here is what actually happens over time. The people who called him cold start asking for his counsel. The people who called him distant start positioning themselves closer to him. The people who said he was arrogant start deferring to his judgment in moments that matter, not because he changed, but because results have a way of rewriting people's narratives, and the silent king has been producing results while they were still forming their opinions. That is the social consequence of this path. Not liked by everyone, not understood by most, relied upon by the ones who have learned to see clearly. Come back to the archetype, the silent king. This is not a persona. This is not a performance. This is not something you wear in certain rooms and remove in others. It is a state of being, built lesson by lesson, silence by silence, controlled response by controlled response, withheld reaction by withheld reaction, brick by brick, a fortress that no room can rattle. No person can enter without your permission. No outcome can permanently destabilize. Most people will spend their entire lives performing strength. The silent king simply possesses it. Most people will spend their entire lives trying to be seen. The silent king simply exists, and in that existence, that quiet, unshakable architectural existence, the room comes to him, always. Not because he demanded it, because he built something that made it inevitable. 7 lessons. Master the architecture of silence. Never react. Always respond. Control your information like a king controls his borders. Become unreadable. Make unpredictability your armor. Let them underestimate you. It is your greatest weapon. Build your interior like a fortress. Move in silence. Let your results announce you. Now I want you to sit with something, not perform an answer. Actually sit with it, right now. In which rooms are you still reacting instead of responding? In which conversations are you still performing instead of possessing? In which moments are you still explaining yourself to people who will never see clearly anyway? Because the silent king you are capable of becoming is not waiting for better circumstances, better rooms, better people. He is waiting for the decision, the quiet, private, permanent decision to stop performing power and start building it. Machiavelli didn't write for the comfortable. He wrote for the ones willing to see clearly, even when what they see is uncomfortable, even when what they see is themselves. Are you ready to see clearly? If these 7 lessons landed, if even one of them hit something in you that recognized itself, then you already know. You already feel the gap between who you've been and who you are capable of becoming. Comment below. 2 words. Tell me you've recognized the archetype. Tell me you've felt the weight of what it means to stop reacting and start ruling. Comment. I am the silent king. And if you want to go further, the next video goes deeper into the architecture, because knowing the 7 lessons is only the beginning. The real work is building them into your bones, into your instincts, into the version of yourself that walks into every room already knowing the outcome. Subscribe. Stay close. The king doesn't announce his arrival. He simply arrives.